See, I told you it wouldn't be the last. Welcome, fellow admirals, to my second addendum to my top 15 favorites list from about 3/4 of a year ago. And quite a lot has happened since my first addendum back during last December. We've had 2 events, various new kainis, and 1 controversial anime to sway my personal opinion on what is now 157 Kanmusu. I counted! And as expected, quite a number of hefty changes have been made to my favorites list because of all that. And I do mean hefty. No, Bismarck hasn't been dethroned from the number 1 spot, don't worry, but this is gonna take a while, so let's just dive in right away and you'll see exactly what I mean. First off, Akashi's now been lowered to the edge of this list at number 15 from her already low position of number 13 from last addendum. And she may be likely to slip off at this rate. That means Taiho and Shokaku are now gone into the depths of obscurity in my mind, as they were previously even lower on the list than her. In Akashi's case, since she's still relevant due to her remaining placement on the list at all, I don't have a reason for her being lowered to this point. This is just where she got pushed down to after all the new additions. And she's actually lucky too, since several characters who were previously above her, Amatsukaze and Zoikaku, and even Tokitsukaze, have also been torn from this list. Yeah, they all fell off too. That's what happens when a video like this is so long overdue. So, in another way of looking at it, Akashi's actually moved up in favoritism. Way to hold on, Akashi. Makes sense that you'd have such incredible grip being the handy mechanic you are. The depressing portion of this video still isn't over yet though, as 2 previously highly regarded Kanmusu have been shoved down to numbers 14 and 12. Akitsumaru and Adachi. Akitsumaru's ranking has been doubled, due to myself realizing that I placed her so high in the last addendum, almost purely out of pity. Heck, I even kind of admit it in that video. But she still stays on this list because, regardless of that pity, her Kai design is strong and unique. Her particular brand of dry personality is kinda charming, to be honest. And the fan art of her is friggin' cool! I just think I rated her a little too highly before. And why is Adachi so low right along with her?
Shut the fuck up!
That swimsuit though. But where is number 13, you might be wondering? Well, holy hell if this isn't ironic, but everybody's favorite unlucky numeral goes to one of the most famously unfortunate ships in the game, Fuso. Now, this is likely more of a surprise to any of you rather than simply another disheartening entry. But sometime between my last addendum and now, I came to the stark revelation that Fuso is essentially the character of Haruna with all of the moe optimism stripped from her. Now, I know I just threw it through a bit stating that liking a Kanmusu almost purely out of pity is wrong, but that's okay, because that only has a small fraction to do with why I felt Fuso deserved to have a place on this list. For starters, even though I admittedly don't care for her in-game art, her overall design, okay, maybe not her hulking mess of cannon so much, but her personal dress is actually quite appealing to me. I particularly like the gears around her waist, the cuffs of her sleeves, and the knee braces. I mean, I don't really know why she's dressed like some kind of shrine maiden, but the metallic parts actually help make it come together and look really interesting. Oh, and I like the added flower petal design that she gets from her kaini. And then there's the Christmas tree looking tower ornament on her head. I think it's supposed to be some kind of pagoda, which never ceases to amuse me. See? Just based on design alone, it's funny how much I can gush about Fuso. And speaking of gushing, her voice kind of gives me a boner. So there's that. I'm not sorry. But what really gets me gushing all over Fuso, in a figurative sense, is of course going to be that personality. She's a lot like Shokaku, but instead substituting straight up injury moe with misfortune moe. I don't even know, is that a real term? Blurring the lines between sadomasochism, legitimate concern, and a feral reaction to cuteness. I always find myself drawn to this sort of thing with at least one character, and I've found the vague notion of misfortune to grant more, often less violent, situations for me to express my affection towards Fuso. It lends more to the imagination, with a greater variety of circumstances where I can either feel bad for her, like when she's insecure, broken down, or fails at a task, or feel great for her, even for the few little things that seem to go her way. Finally, moving ourselves up into a generally more positive region of this list, though, we now find Shigure sitting at number 11, and Suzuya now sitting at number 9, who both share the sole reason of being lowered from their previous positions as literally pure coincidence, and together house another new entry on this list. Proof that a kaini can truly change my opinion on a character for the better, even drastically so. At number 10, it's Maya-sama! Or Maya. Just Maya. Yeah, she gets some new lines that add to her tough girl persona that I like, and allow her to embrace how everyone knew her as, oh yeah, that one heavy cruiser that has abnormally high anti-air for some reason. But let's talk about that outfit. Oh my god, Parsley, you are a genius. I mean, besides when you drew Hamikaze, you're an absolute genius. Where do I even start with this outfit? It's so simple, and yet it's the first design in the game that makes me feel more appropriate playing it in the bathroom than anywhere else. The cleavage, the exposed shoulders, the midriff, the pleated skirt, the knee-high socks, those cute little shoes, even that tiny hat, that specific green color, and the fact that the mask that used to be on her head actually got a good-looking upgrade, and that damaged portrait! This design just makes me go crazy, man! But there's something more impressive to me than making a visually appealing, sexually revealing outfit. And that's making a visually appealing outfit that has almost no sexual appeal whatsoever, and single-handedly manages to be arguably the best design in the entire game. Yep, not kidding. At number 8 now, it's U511. And this design is what I believe to be the closest the franchise has ever come in giving its audience a character which actually creates the greatest compromise with the idea of a ship girl. Granting us something that looks like a cute girl, but also legitimately appears dressed and equipped in such a way that I not only believe that she's built to resemble a warship, in her particular case a U-boat submarine, but also that something like her could actually exist, and it doesn't even come close to bending my suspension of disbelief. She looks just like she's ready to dive deep into the sea and act like a submarine. Even her skin and hair are extremely pale, suggesting at least a couple ideas. A, that she does this often, and B, that she's a robot of some kind, which the Kanmusu are technically supposed to be if you look at the game's structure. I can even believe that she would be built to appear as a cute young girl, because it's always more agreeable, if you're trying to sell it to others, to have an object that looks appealing to people in some way, allowing her to become the perfect super weapon, especially considering how realistically expensive she might be to create. Easy to transport, non-threatening looking, and as a bonus, humanoid to allow for compassion. She can even infiltrate in more ways than one, since by being small and having arms and legs, she can move and fight from underwater, but also sneak around above water onto a surface if need be. But sadly, that's just about where my compliments end. Sure, in-game, her kudere personality and slow speech pattern due to her inability to speak Japanese is cute, and I do like it a lot. But then we have to be reminded of why the developers specifically chose U511 over any other U-boat. Because she was handed over to the Japanese by the Germans during World War II, and the Japanese calibrated her a bit differently afterward. This translates in-game as Row 500, where fittingly enough, the best design in the game suddenly becomes the biggest slap in the face in the entire game by this kaini form. Good thing her stats don't change too drastically, because I am not trading a masterpiece for lolicon fan service. Though, speaking of fan service, our next new entry feels like it was fan service specifically designed with me in mind. Of course it wasn't, but I like to dream! And it's not just in terms of design, but it's the personality that really sells it here. At number 7, everybody, I give you the always edible Akizuki. Why edible? Because every time I even look at her or hear her voice, all I want to do is just literally eat her, so that her body might somehow fuse with mine, and I can become a better person for it. God, why didn't I put you in my last addendum, Akizuki? Cannibalism aside, the answer to that question is that I wanted to give time to make absolutely certain that I wanted Akizuki to be added to this list, especially with so many other additions having been latched on during the previous addendum. Fitting circumstances for whom I like to address personally and affectionately as my Discipline Monitor 2D Daughteru. Yes, Daughteru. Kind of like a waifu, but without the mental sex. Somebody I'd like to culture and prime, as if they were my own seed. She reminds me of a secretary who takes her job very seriously with the way she talks in many of her lines. A girl devoted to her work, but doesn't expect any reward out of it except for the knowledge that the cogs are turning just as they should be, so to speak. And hey, that kind of discipline is one of Bismarck's golden tenets. So Eugene, this young Asian girl's got you some serious competition. And while this quality might seem boring to a lot of you, there are a few factors going for her that I do believe set her apart from being boring. Her voice, her design, and her tenacious attitude. Regarding her voice, unlike Prince Eugen, Ariozawa gives what I feel to be a more soothing tone to Akizuki, and while this may not mean a lot on the surface, it instills an idea in me that Akizuki, despite being peppy in her own right, is actually a more peaceful character, almost like she's trying to create a state of zen in the workplace. I mean, I could just listen to her talk all day. Whatever needs doing, I'll do it if told by that voice. And that's where Akizuki's design comes in. God, I just want to pet that head. Hold those freaking amazing gloves in my hands. Bite right down on those delicious thighs. Accented by that color scheme. She's a sticky, sweet, caramel oozing rice ball. After all, remember what I said earlier? I don't want to have sex with Akizuki. I want to devour Akizuki. Two totally different things. And it's made all the most mouth-watering by that also aforementioned tenacious attitude of hers. With that anti-air stat, she's one of the most useful girls in the game, but she is surprisingly humble about it, just like her cooking. And she is always striving to make certain, regardless of her actual capability, that she has given her reasonably best effort. That is truly Akizuki's most respectable, admirable quality, and ultimately acts as the strongest knot to tether herself with onto this number 7 spot. Though, if she happens to suddenly disappear from there at any point, well, I'll make sure to at least leave the gloves behind as a trophy. We're getting pretty close to the top, and I'm about to betray something I've said for 2 videos now. Taige still definitely holds the medal for best character progression in the game, but I'm beginning to realize that it doesn't necessarily make her the best character in the game. I don't know, Ryuho is starting to grow a bit stale on me. Not anywhere near the point where I would ever knock her from the top 10, oh no, much less knock her from the list entirely, Jesus. But her underwhelming abilities do tend to let themselves be noticed. And while she has done good for me during events, and I do use her consistently for completing 1-5, it's been a stretch. And CVLs were always my least favorite class to begin with. And since I'm playing a video game where I need a variety of useful characters with skills and particular attributes that make it wise to use them as often as possible, even a characterization juggernaut like Ryuho can prove to have rather remarkable weaknesses. Unfortunately, bringing her down from number 2 all the way to number 6. Even Nagato has proven consistently useful to me, despite being blackballed as slow among other battleships. Because she's still a battleship! One that can still keep pace with all of the super battleships, newbie foreigners, and Kainis that have been flooding in over the course of this game's running time. That, and she's still my type of woman. Strong, resilient, ready to protect, and rocking a sexy set of abs. A beautiful man with a pair of tits. That makes me sound pretty gay, yeah, but Nagato is my reliable, muscle-bound, gentle giant Prince Charming, and none of you and your attempts to saturate the fandom with that out-of-nowhere, child-molesting portrayal of her known as Nagamon can take that away from me. So with that said, who could I have possibly replaced her with at number 4? Must be pretty cool if she can get one up on Nagato.
Katsuragi,
Oh my god, that is one of the cutest 2D girls I've ever seen in my life. Funny story, originally Amagi, the forgotten middle child Onryu class, was going to be placed somewhere on this list, but wow, I'm glad I waited on that decision. I mean, I'm sorry, Amagi, and I really am, but this mentions about as much recognition as you're gonna get on this list. For now. Maybe. Anyway, Katsuragi has definitively become my favorite Onryu class aircraft carrier, and even my favorite carrier in the entire game up to this point. I've learned ever since acquiring Amagi during the Winter 2015 event that the Onryu class, as a whole, really aren't that bad. They consume the least amount of resources out of all the standard carriers, and little did I know that they actually come with some big deal stats that are on par or even superior to the Shokaku class and even the second carrier division. Until their respective kainis, of course, such as anti-air, firepower, and even more surprisingly, armor. Apparently in this game, wearing less can actually make you stronger. Who knew that Shimakaze had the right idea all along? So from that, and noticing that they do about as much damage as any other standard aircraft carrier, I'm sure you can gather that I've been putting them to work quite a bit. Particularly Katsuragi as soon as she debuted. I was really reeled in at first by her Kai design. Right off the bat, she's tan and showing off those tight abs. A great initial hook for my taste. But even that wouldn't be enough without some long, dark hair. But with blue, glittery streaks to prove that she's all magical. I'm loving this! In fact, she's got an abundance of bright colors that work well together, featured prominently in all the right places. I can tell that Kuro put a lot of honest-to-goodness effort into this one. That or this was the greatest fluke he's ever made. And to top it all off, she certainly seems to be the smartest of the 3 Onryu sisters, considering that she's wearing the most armor. I'm undeniably and especially fond of her leg armor, which bears an uncanny resemblance to women's stockings. It's so cute, you know? Some of you might joke that this is all just so she can compensate for her undeniable lack of visible breasts, but I make no joke when I counter stating that the variety is good, even if my favorites list tends to be suggesting the opposite. But when I actually bothered learning what Katsuragi was spouting at me in her moonspeak, then she transcended from just an excellent character design to one of my absolute favorite Kanmusu, likely of all time. On the surface, she looks like she might just be another tsundere character, but honestly, Katsuragi's actually much nicer than a good number of other Kanmusu, who range from unmistakably condescending to just outright insulting you. Personally, I define Katsuragi as more of the Genki girl archetype, with maybe a little bit of sun. She doesn't just want to be an aircraft carrier, but the best aircraft carrier. She loudly proclaims that she wants all of your best planes, wields a strong, unbiased desire to learn, and can even perform what she refers to as a special trick or signature maneuver for herself. She's a shonen manga protagonist, not a light novel love interest. There are plenty of other lines that she has that add depth to her personality beyond that, though, such as her squeeing when she gets to commence allowed fleet operations as the acting flagship. Her shock and later humble modesty when she earns MVP. Her getting hungry when she gets mad, her fangirl admiration for Zoikaku, her personal dream of being the leader of a combined fleet, and then her shy happiness when she successfully prods you, her admiral, about your own aspirations. There is just so much to her character that I could continue, but Well, I've been going on for way too long about it already. Point here is that Katsuragi is one of the best written characters in the game, not necessarily for progression, but for her feeling among the most human. And that is the linchpin behind her getting this number 4 spot. Now, as we come close to the end of this addendum video, this thought may have crossed your mind, possibly even more than once if you've been watching my previous videos. Where is Haruna? Well, have I got a surprise for you. Guess who not only made a brave leap back into the highest reaches of this list, but made it up even higher than she's ever been listed before? That's right, Haruna, now sitting keen at number 3. The brief wave of indifference I felt in my heart was only gone a couple months after my previous addendum video. My passion for her has been returning exponentially since then. And I think it started when she got the shaft the way she did from the anime. It reminded me that Haruna really does deserve better, not just because she's been kind of, periodically forgotten about throughout her existence, but because, to me, she really is the most interesting, the most endearing, and the most useful out of the 4 Congo sisters. And lest we need not forget damn angelic bangs. As you might expect from my previous assertion that Haruna is just a more optimistic Fuso, that misfortune moe I brought up also does lend itself to Haruna. A much milder dose, of course, but it's certainly there since she isn't always the nicest to herself either. But that's why she looks and acts so much squishier and so much more delicate than her sisters, though. She looks like she gives the best hugs out of all of them, so I can physically comfort her every time and tell her it's gonna be daijobu. Or maybe I'm having a bad day and I just need a hug to comfort me. She'll be there to tell me it's gonna be daijobu too. And personally, even small interactions like that mean a lot to me. And not like in a motherly way, doing something like that because it's just what a mother is supposed to do. No, but like a friend who does it because they can actually relate. It bears actual meaning. I'm not sure if that makes sense to some of you who are watching this, but I really can't think of any other Kanmusu who could be more legitimately understanding of that than Haruna. The poor girl doesn't give herself enough credit. And of course, that leaves us with our last change to the list. Prince Eugen's jump to the heralded number 2 spot, so that she can appropriately be seated next to our dear idol, Bismarck, who remains the only Kanmusu to ever appear on this list who has yet to change position. Because, really, there should be no expectation in your minds of the golden glimmering goddess of primed perfection, Bismarck, being anywhere on my favorites list except number 1. It was only natural, I suppose, that Eugene would rise to this point, since she always manages to bring a smile to my face, and I do see a lot of myself in her. She genuinely brings me happiness, which is greater than a more objective viewpoint of having the best character progression like Taige does. And that's no backhanded compliment toward Eugene. Like Katsuragi, a lot of her lines still feel like they bring a lot of variety and humanity to her character, especially once you go into her hourlies. The biggest reason she hasn't surpassed Bismarck on this list is simply because of what Bismarck embodies over her. Eugene, while a more interesting character as she represents the journey it takes to become someone of such caliber, Bismarck is living that goal, and is therefore someone I ultimately respect more for actually becoming such an outstanding achievement. Whew, wow. With all that now said and done, I must admit, now more than ever, I'm really starting to feel a greater attachment towards my favorites list, because it's truly beginning to feel like it's molding into something that highlights best what sort of characters I prefer overall. I don't feel that it's perfect yet, but everyone in the top 10 at the very least definitely feels like they belong in there. Maybe their respective placements might change, but they belong in there nonetheless. And it would take another phenomenal character to slip themselves in between. So I still don't think I'm quite ready to expand the list here to a top 20. I still feel like I'm sifting the excess out from underneath. And just who is that excess at this point? Well, I can't be 100% sure since Kantai Collection is always evolving. But someday, I'll know for sure. Likely someday very soon. So, until the next addendum, these are my current top 15 favorite Kanmusu.